Hi, Scott. I'm so excited that you're here to have a chat with us today. Today's a very big day. It's Safer Internet Day, and who better to speak with than an expert? So I thought I'd give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience. So take it away.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate being here. My name is Scott Driscoll, and I am the president and founder of Internet Safety Concepts. And what I do with my company is I will talk to anyone who will listen to me about the good, the bad, the pros, the cons, and the dangers of today's ever-changing technology world. My goal is to not take away the internet from people who are using it, but better empower the best choices. We know when we use it appropriately, technology can be a great tool. So my goal is to empower families to use it as safely as possible.
Well, I think that's amazing because so often we hear people having conversations of, don't let your child do this and don't let your child do that. And your kid shouldn't be online. And I think that a lot of the times parents feel discouraged because that's not really a helpful tip in today's world. For our kids, for just parents to say no to their kids all the time. Parents want to be able to say yes, but they also want to be able to say yes with boundaries and with the resources that they need. So it's amazing to know that you're out there and that you're so passionate about educating families and teaching families about how to stay safe on the internet. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I did 33 years in law enforcement. Most of my career was spent investigating crimes against children until the internet came out. So yeah, I'm that old. I was a police officer before the internet even existed. But when the internet came out, I was assigned to a task force that changed my life. And it was an FBI task force based on investigating crimes against children on the internet. And I saw firsthand what our children were experiencing it. Whether we were investigating child pornography, enticement, or luring cases, we saw how it could get out of control. I spent about 10 years as a 13-year-old girl on the internet, and I was seeing firsthand how things could be really fun and entertaining and ways to communicate with people and just have a good time. And then unfortunately, I saw a very dark side, which kind of drove me to educate people who might not be aware of what's happening on the world and the world of technology. And it just kind of grew from there. And that's how it started. And it's just been a passion of mine ever since to make sure we be as safe as possible.
So that's absolutely fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
I joke a lot. I had hair before the internet, and it's always a joke that I say because there's so many different ways you can look at it, the pros and the cons.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, we're very focused on gaming and the risks that come with that. And unfortunately, we know that online predators and privacy violations and cyberbullying and so many other risks and dangers exist on the internet. And we always look at that from a gaming perspective and how kids go online to have a good time and to play video games and to communicate with their friends. But it's not as simple as that. So with Safer Internet Day here, I thought it would be great to have a conversation about ways that parents can help keep their kids safe online. So I thought maybe we could go over a few tips of things that you typically tell parents are sort of absolute musts, both in the gaming world and just online in general. And, really tangible things that parents can do so that they can walk away feeling like, okay, I can keep my kids safe. I can do X, Y, and Z to make them a little bit safer. And so, let's talk about some of the things parents can do.
Okay. The first tip I give, and sometimes parents might already kind of go, oh, when I say this, but we need to get involved. And I don't expect parents to become technology experts or understand how every game or every app works. However, I think they need to understand the foundation of maybe what their children are doing. For example, if they're using social media apps, I think parents should be aware of what app their children are using. Easier said than done sometimes. Yeah, if we let our children have unlimited access to the internet and unlimited access to their devices. So one of the ways I talk to parents is we got to start to gain control about learning about the apps to make sure you're right with it. And it's also appropriate for your child's age and maturity. Doing some research and getting involved. But again, like we said in the beginning, not just saying no, because there are some things out there that children can use to learn better and communicate better. So there are some things we can use to really be effective. Parents just need to know the difference. So the first thing for parents is to get involved. And so many parents go, well, are you going to teach us? I go, why don't you sit down with your child? They have the device that you gave them. Look at what they're doing and look at the apps they've downloaded or what you've allowed and learn together. If your child's on Instagram, develop an Instagram account, follow them, communicate with them. But I think parents also have to understand there's rules. And the biggest rule that I see violated is the minimum age on apps. Minimum age on social media is 13 by the guidelines. And right now, I think in our government, they're even trying to raise those ages, which there's a lot of pros and cons to that. My concern is if our parents just let our kids go free reign on the internet, and no matter what the minimum ages are, you can do what you want. It's a risky behavior, but it's also not sending a real good message to our children about following rules and why they're there to be safe. Right now, I teach programs anywhere from 4th grade through adult. And I have so many school districts wanting me to come in 3rd grade just to talk about social media. And if we just put that minimum age perspective into it, that's crazy. Because what a 3rd grader is doing and what I might be doing on TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat is completely different. Might not be illegal what our kids see, but it might certainly not be appropriate on what we want our kids to see and learn as they're developing. So getting involved is the first rule I always give to parents.
Yeah, so that really hits close to home for me because I actually have a 3rd grader, and we were recently having a conversation just in the last week or two about how she told me that, some of her friends have told her, I have Facebook, I have TikTok, I have Instagram. And, in our house, we have conversations about online safety all the time. And we, certainly have conversations about social media all the time and what is sort of appropriate in our home and what's not. And like you say, the age guidelines are put in place for a reason. But I think that, that goes hand in hand with exactly what you're saying. That communication piece is so, so big. And we at Kitas, we believe that, and our whole purpose and process and sort of our reason for being is to help with communication, to close the gap between kids and parents, because we all know that it's almost impossible to keep up with our children at the pace that they're learning, especially when it comes to technology, between what they're learning from their friends and what they're learning at school and, what they're watching on YouTube and what they're seeing. They're just exposed to so much more than we ever were. And, I like that you said, learn with your kids. And I think that's the best way to get involved with your kids. At least when a new video game comes out or our kids play a new video game, sitting down with them and asking them, hey, why don't you teach me about it? I've never seen it. It was very different when I was younger. I don't know how to play the games the same way you did. I had to talk to my sister beside me, not a stranger online. It opens communication to talk about, what your life was like when you were a kid and to share fun stories, but also, and like, that's amazing for bonding, but also to be able to connect over learning more about technology and getting a little bit of insight into what it is that they're doing, instead of just standing above and saying, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. Don't do that. So
I think, and I'm sorry to cut you off. If we get involved in the education process with our children, one, it gives good skills. They understand that they have resources that are appropriate they can go to, but it also forms that bond where if something goes wrong, they feel comfortable to come talk to us. Our children go to sites like YouTube and TikTok to learn about how to play games. They do the research, but the challenge is who's putting those videos together? It's another user, and they might be great at the game, but maybe the language they're using isn't what you want your kid to be exposed to. Or maybe some of the hidden features in a game that just aren't age appropriate, they're pointing out and now piquing the curiosity of our younger kids to get involved in things they shouldn't. I never tell students to stop playing games. I think that's just unfair. But I think they've got to be appropriate for their age level, their maturity. And one way as parents we do that is we have to get involved and we learn from them. I think it's a great opportunity when it comes to this technology to have conversations and work on it together to build and get stronger.
Absolutely. So like you say, the same way that there's age ratings for social media, there's also age ratings for video games, and almost anything that you do online or things that your kids are doing, there will be some type of rating or, something that you can look into. And so, I guess what you're saying is make sure that you know those rules and those guidelines and the age ratings and what they mean, because they are put in place for a reason.
And I think parents have to be, and I know some parents are intimidated by technology because we just don't understand it. And I respect that completely. You were joking about games when we were a kid. Best video game, in my opinion, ever invented was Pong. 2 lines and a ball, and you could talk to the person left and right. It was great. The way I kind of get parents to think about it is, let's say your 4th grader comes to you and says, Dad, I want to drive your car today. And our parents are going to look at them and go, well, you're not old enough. You haven't learned how to drive, and it's not safe for your age. Our kids know that, because when I ask them, are you going to go home and take your parents' car for a drive, and they're in 4th grade, they go, no, that's silly. I'm not safe. I don't know how to do it. I'm not old enough. The kids have the understanding of that if we spend the time to explain why. Not just say, no, you're not going to play the game. Have the conversation saying, you know what, as a family, this is just isn't right for us right now, or we're going to learn on it together.
Right. And it's funny that you use that, driving a car scenario, because I frequently say that all the time when, parents are asking us, well, my child doesn't want the software that you offer to monitor their communication on their computer. And how do you explain it to them? And I say the same type of thing. Like, when you put your car, when your kid is old enough to drive and they start driving, we talk about the safety of wearing a seatbelt and following the rules of the road, and that whether or not you are a safe driver, you can't control the other people who are driving on the road beside you. And that's, in reference to people who are trying to scam kids online and online predators, and you can't control what other people are doing online, but you are right there in the middle of it, the same way you're right in the middle of the road. And so,
this is why I think we're going to, Jesus and Internet Safety Council are going to have a very good partnership, because we're on the same page. It's not about taking everything away. It's about, we've got to, what I always say, we got to get better. We got to get stronger. We got to keep moving forward. Absolutely. And I think it's something that kids have to do as they go through life and developmental. But as parents, we have to understand that there's stages of our life we can learn something new every single day. And sometimes we can learn from our kids, and we can just keep getting better and stronger at it.
Agreed. Okay, so tip 1 is communicate, communicate, communicate. What's next on the list?
Privacy. If we're going to use some of these apps and games, if there's a way of setting them to private, is absolutely, I think, the most important thing when it comes to keeping people out of our world we don't want in our world. Now, no privacy setting, as we know, is going to be 100%, but it's one layer of safety. And if we instill that in our children very early, it gets the good habits when it comes to technology. It's not, I want to go viral or I want to become famous. If we're going to use it, we think about the safety, and then the fun and creativity can come along with it. The challenge is, especially with gamers, I talk to students almost every day about technology, and I am not a gaming expert. I'm a communication and online with social media. I'll throw my name into that hat, but on gaming, as I'm not. But one thing I've learned is, every time I talk to students about online gaming, they always say the same thing. I'm playing with my friends. And I say, okay, where'd you meet them? You from math class? Are you in the same basketball team? They go, no, from the game. Okay, so on the internet. Yeah. And then we have a whole conversation. And then as they start to answer some of my questions, they start to realize, I don't really know this person, do I? Well, no, you know about them, what they want you to know. Right. And it could be a good person. I think majority of us are good people, but we can't tell, especially when we have a device in between us. Setting it to private, and for parents to sit down and go, okay, who are these people? But now, where do you know them from? It always used to be, who is this person? Oh, that's John. Well, where do you know John from? I think it's got to be follow-up communication and conversation, because that also lets our kids know we're invested. We're going to get involved in this. It's no longer just, do you know them? Yep. We got to dig into it a little bit, because there's 3 words online that we all use: friends, followers, and the one that I wish we used more, strangers. Right. They all kind of blend. And we got our headphones on, or we're texting through text messages, or we're in a group chat with people we kind of know. We have to remember who we're talking to and make sure it's private and we know who it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a scary game with that, because we lose control over that. And privacy protects us. And I learned about that from my kids when they were younger. My daughter came up with a great rule: 2 questions when she gets a follow request. Who is this person? And why are they so important? I want to talk to them. And I looked at her and said, why didn't I think of that? Right. Because I remember when I joined Facebook for the first time, I was getting friends requests from people I went to high school with, and I'm just approving everybody. Then I realized we didn't like each other in high school, or we never even said a word to each other in high school. But now we're sharing each other's lives.
Right.
So privacy helps us stay as safe as we possibly can be. Again, I wish it was a guarantee, but it is one layer of safety.
Right. Absolutely. Because, if you look on games like Roblox and Fortnite, if you have an open account and you're just playing with everyone, that you've already given someone a piece of information about yourself that you didn't necessarily offer up just by having the same interest of playing that game. And that immediately, you look at walking on the street or seeing someone at school and you've never spoken to before, and you don't know if you have anything in common, or what are we going to talk about? Or, what's that first conversation going to be? You automatically already have this common interest, which is the game, that just gives you an easy in to have a conversation with a stranger, or rather for a stranger to have a conversation with your child. So it is very scary. And that's very wise what your daughter said. And we, do our best to go, I guess, like a piece of that, becomes very difficult because we teach our kids not to use usernames that have anything to do with themselves, their pet's name, where they live, anything that relates to them in any way, shape, or form. But then we also tell them, you can't just befriend anyone. You need to know who that person is. How do you know them? Where did you find, but there is really nothing that's distinguishable in their usernames anymore. Right. Nope. And so,
but if we're friends with someone and we truly know somebody, and you and I are really good friends, we know each other from school or we've grown up together, and I come up with a screen name ABC123, right. I can text you, said, hey, it's Scott. Exactly. ABC123. So then there's, again, one more layer of, hey, it's almost like a two-step authentication that so many of our programs do. Now we can do that because we're thinking about safety, and right. we can create that kind of thing for ourselves. And when in doubt, you get a friend request from somebody or a game request from someone, it looks like your friend, or maybe they're using their name. Before you accept it, call them. Hey, did you create a new account, or is this you? Right. Take a couple seconds and just slow down. That's the challenge we run into, is we're so fast paced.
Yes.
And we're so impulsive on so many things we do. And it's not just our children, it's the world we live in right
now. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So what's next?
For me, it would certainly be the next bit of advice would be talking to our kids about situations before they happen. On my website, I've got safety guides and I've got contracts for families to use. And I really believe in talking to our children about these situations, depending on what level they are in their life of maturity, so they have an outlet. When I talk to kids, I'm going to say it once or twice a week, I have students come up to me very upset because they sent a picture that was supposed to disappear, but it got screenshotted. Mm-hmm. They made a comment to somebody that they know it shouldn't have happened. Now they don't know what to do. And the first thing I always ask them is, what did the adult in your support system, your parent, your aunt, your uncle, that adult you can talk to, what did they say about this problem? And the most common thing kids say is, I can't tell them. I don't even know how to start that conversation. Yeah. As parents, if we bridge that gap before it happens, I think it's so important. Talk to them about picture sharing. Talk to them about group text messages, which are just getting completely out of control with our youngsters. Talk about the apps ahead of time and say, okay, if you make the decision, please let me be the first person you come talk to if you have a problem. Mm-hmm. And I was honest with my kids. Listen, there might be consequences. There might be, because of your actions, we all make mistakes. There might be a consequence, but it's not going to be something that jeopardizes your safety or your future. We get together and work on it now. Maybe we can stop it, gain control, learn from it, get better, get stronger.
Right. Yeah. And I always tell my kids, you should always come to me first. And at the same time, I try to keep the lines of communication and keep ensure that we're honest with one another, where I say to them, every parent is concerned. I don't say this part to them. Every parent is concerned about how they're going to react in a situation, if they know how to react. And every parent has been in a situation where they react to their kid, and then an hour later they think, oh, I wish I'd handled that a little bit differently. I wish I'd responded differently. That I've said to my kids many times, I am entitled to have emotions about what happened or what you're telling me, and to have feelings about what you're telling me. But then we all sort of need to pull back and still be able to have a conversation about it, and not let that deter us from having conversations. And I'm constantly telling myself as a parent, like, just, okay, take a deep breath, count to 3 before you respond. And, think about, if you respond in 3 minutes from this moment or this moment right now, it's not going to, nothing dangerous is going to happen in those 3 minutes, but it could very quickly change how the rest of the conversation goes and how things look in the future. But kids, there's no question, kids are afraid of, like we said at the beginning, being punished or being yelled at, or, their parents being upset with them. And so that's, I always make sure, like, I might be upset in the moment. I'm entitled to feel upset, but my feelings towards you are always, like, will always stay the same. And together we need to figure out the next step.
Listen, I was a youth officer and I was brought into, I can't tell you how many families to try to help situations. So I was one of the officers in my community. That was what our job was. We went in and tried to help. So you think I would have all these skills, and I learned a lot over the years, but there were a lot of times where all of a sudden emotion came involved in it. And I remember telling my kids afterwards, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have raised my voice, or I shouldn't have taken this away from you because the punishment didn't fit the crime, kind of thing. But in the moment, I was angry, I was hurt, I was something, and that's okay. They can write all the parenting books they want, but until you become a parent and you're in this situation, we have no idea what we're going to do.
Yep.
But our kids don't see that also. So I've always tried to be honest with my kids. Hey, if I make a mistake, I'm the first to come tell you I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And my daughter, when she was younger, I mean, she used to tell me, and this is a line we always used to use, if I would take something away from her, I hate you. And I would always look to her and say, it's going to be a long and healthy hate, because right now you might feel that way, but in a little while you're not going to. And we got a lot of time together. We're going to work through this. But right now, you can go ahead and not like my decision, but understand sometime you're going to figure out that's why Dad did it. And it's challenging, because I know I always want to get along with my kids, but I also remember that I'm their dad, and there's some times where we're just not going to agree, and I have to play the dad.
For sure. If we don't protect our kids, then who will?
Yep.
So they're always watching us. They're learning from everything that we do. And, I remember a friend who has older kids than me had once said to me, my goal in life is to become my kids' inner voice. So all those things that I told them growing up and help them through situations, as they get older and they find themselves in those situations, they'll hear what I would tell them, because they will have learned how to handle those situations appropriately. And I thought, yeah, that's, I hope my inner voice is.
I never thought of that. That's a pretty creative. That's a pretty creative approach. That's a pretty reasonable goal. I think that's a pretty good goal to try.
Yeah, exactly. So we have, keep the lines of communication open. Communicate. Privacy is absolutely, the most important. And now we're talking about being proactive.
Yes. I also think that parents need to get control. And one of the things I think when we get control is, especially for our younger students, if our children have a phone where they can download apps, as parents have control over that aspect of the phone. So if you're an iPhone or a Google Play, log off that, have the parents have it set up to their email and to their password. So if a child wants to download an app, they have to come for you and say, hey, I want to get this app. Can you open it up so we can download it? And there's going to be a lot of times I think parents say, sure, no problem. But at least that gives the opportunity to figure out what's going on. And it starts what I call the foundation of safety. When our children feel they have to hide the apps from their parents or not tell them the truth, safety is crumbling around them right when they start. And the way I tell the kids this is, if you can't tell the people who keep you the safest what you're doing, you should not be telling strangers. Right. And just to get them thinking about it, I just can't, I don't tell kids what to do when it comes to the internet. I just try to get them to think about what's important for them. So I think parents gaining that control a little bit. There's apps and programs that can monitor what our children are downloading or what they're using. I think it's important. And I love when kids say, you can't do that. I have the right to privacy. Okay, then stay off the internet if you want privacy. And I don't mean to sound so, upfront about that, but that's the truth of it. If we're going to go onto the internet, I think our expectation of privacy really starts to drop a little bit. And do I think that's fair? No, it's the reality of how it works. So when kids say to me they want privacy, and I say, all right, well then take the internet off your phone and go back to playing Pong on a television set. So I think parents need to try their best to gain a little control. And even though you might say to yourself, well, it's too late. It's never too late. So listen, we made some mistakes. From this point on, here's our rules and here's what we're going to do to work on it together.
Right.
We can learn from what we've done in the right and wrong way, and we can build on it.
Right. I like, you know, like you mentioned before, you know, everybody, most parents, they want to be friends with their kids. They want to get along with their kids, but it's just not realistic all the time. But in terms of like, when you're talking about taking back a little bit of control or having some control on those, on their devices, I guess for kids, you know, I've always felt the earlier we can start, the better, because it becomes part of the expectation of being online, of our kids using the internet and having access to phones or iPads or whatever they may have access to in their home. It just is one of the rules that starts right from the beginning. And it's much easier to work with your kids when that's what they know and that's what's been set from the beginning. But, you know, with older kids, sorry, go ahead.
Think about this, Jenna. The first time you or your child put on a seatbelt, it was uncomfortable. It was weird. We had to learn it. The second time we got a little easier. The third time, by the fifth time, it's a habit. Well, okay, you're going to download an app. Here's the first or four things we do. We set it to private. We know who's on our world. Right. Then the next time it happens, it's part of our who we are. It's habits, and it's good habits to have. Right. So even though it might take a little while and it seems like it's a struggle, we keep building in the right way. That's when the good stuff can happen.
Right. So like, talk to me a little bit about having those conversations with kids who are older, who tend to give more pushback about setting their accounts to private, about only being friends with the people they want to be friends with, about open lines of communication when they feel like, you know, they're at that stage where all they feel like any communication with parents is too much information. You know, how can we sort of break those barriers?
I come back to what I call our digital tattoo. Now, some refer to it as a digital footprint. Either way, it's what follows us online. And as the kids get older, I really start to have them thinking about that, especially our high school students, because high school students know this technology. It's great. But then I say, okay, have you looked at your social media? Have you looked at your digital tattoo through the eyes of somebody else? And that's when a lot of kids look at me and go, what do you mean? I go, all right, well, log everything off. Try to find you. What do you find? Do you like what you see? Is it what you want the world to see in 4 years from now when you're sitting before a college scholarship committee, when you're sitting before a person that might hire you for the job you really want and you've worked hard for? If we start to think about this technology, it's not just our now, it's our future. And I wish it wasn't that way. I wish we could erase the internet weekly and start from scratch, get all of our mistakes off of there, but we know we can't. So one of the ways I have parents talk to their kids about it is just be honest about that. This is the concerns that we see. Or, hey, I saw you on one of your pictures and you had a beer in your hand. Well, you know, you're under 21, and that could certainly not be what you want the world to see. For middle school students, they say, well, I don't have to worry about college. That's digital tattoo doesn't impact me. Well, it does now. There's a lot of things that middle school students do, like, hey, I want to babysit for you. I want to babysit your third grader. I can promise you're going to go to Google, you're going to go to Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and try to find that babysitter before they come into your home to make sure they represent you. So having the conversation that it's not just about what I think, it's what the world can perceive and what you're leaving behind. Let's make sure it's what you want left behind. I think sometimes it's a pretty good start. Also, when it comes to that, and which was going to be the fifth point I was going to talk about, is being careful on how much we share, including pictures. My big concern is how much videos and pictures our youth are sharing right now that they will never be able to get back. And what looks funny or what has a humor to it now might not be funny in a couple of years, or can be turned into a meme with some really mean words. There's just so many things that can happen if we share too much.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like that perspective of, you know, look at how other people are seeing you. And it's funny because I think about, like, as your kids are growing up and like you're going out for dinner and they're like, well, I just want to wear my sweatpants and my ripped whatever. And it's like, I don't care how I look. And it's always how do you want to be perceived, right? You're going to go somewhere nice, or you're going to go out, and is that how you want to be perceived by others? And it really is no different.
But even not even perception is absolutely one of them. But let's just talk about safety for a second.
For sure.
I go into a presentation and I'm at a middle school. This just happened about a month ago. And I have social media accounts for my company, and middle school students started to follow me. So I said, okay, you're following me. I'm going to see, are you open to the public? Yep. And there are young people dancing with shirts from their school as they're dancing and sharing it to the world. So although I'm not looking into anything like that, because that's not who I am, but someone could go, I know where that child lives. There's billions of people on the world, but now I know the name of your school where maybe only a couple hundred kids go.
Right.
Little things about the things we share, we have to think about safety. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. I wish we didn't have to. And I still believe there's so many good people out there, but unfortunately, when we connect to strangers, we don't know. So that's why understanding maybe less is more that we share. We have people that share every walk of their life. I don't care what you're eating for dinner, but my gosh, we put online all of our food, but then we tag it with our location.
Right.
We're giving up patterns of our life. It's almost like a pin map of everywhere we go. If we think about safety, it just might not be the best choice.
Right. Especially for people who are paying extra close attention and are, their intentions are not the best.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they are out there and we're sharing the internet with them.
Yes. And you most certainly know after all the work you've done.
I've seen it.
Yeah. No, but I think it's so important to be able to give information to parents that is, tangible. There's examples of, what you can say to your kids and how you can say it to your kids and how to remove it from just the four walls of your house of why it's not okay in this house, but why it's not okay in the context of the world, in order to keep your kids protected. That truly is a parent's number one and most important job. And so being able to offer anything that helps, no one else can keep your child safe for you. But there are such amazing resources out there, such as yourself, such as softwares like Protect Me, the guides that you have on your site. There's so much information out there. And especially on a day like today, Safer Internet Day, there's so many websites that have links to resources to, get involved in the conversation, ask questions that you need answers to, and to find the resources to be able to feel supported in, what feels like such a huge, massive space of the internet and keeping our children safe.
Yeah, we can't give up. They're our kids. They're the most important things to us. So we can't give up and we've got to keep trying.
Yeah. So tell our followers the best way to find you.
Okay. The best way to find me, if you go to my website, it's internetsafetyconcepts.com. I have several pages of resources. You can purchase my books that I have a couple internet safety books that are on there for families to read together. I have a whole page under 4 families of safety guides and contracts. Also on there is all my social media links where if you wanted to follow me. Now, again, I promise there's no pictures of food. It's all about internet and safety and how we can work together to keep our kids safe. But there's also a contact page on there. So if anybody watching has any questions or concerns that they just can't find the answers to, they can certainly reach out and I would steer them in any direction I could to help them in any way I could.
Well, we are lucky to have been able to have this conversation with you. You're such an incredible resource and you clearly have so much knowledge and we're very in line in terms with what we are trying to do on a daily basis, which is just keep kids safe. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.